welcome to the writer's class. Yes, I got it right this time. I know the name of my own podcast, but before you guys judge, that might be the wrong word, but I'm going to go with judge, although it's strong. I'm going with it. I'm going to commit it. We're rolling. Before you guys judge, I do have 4 podcasts for crying out loud. It is podcasts or podcasts. I'm going to go with 4 podcasts. I write for a living. Can you believe it? But I do have 4 podcasts, so therefore I get a little confused. Like the last one I said it was a Lady Sale podcast, looked down and recognized there was no director, producer, or actor sitting there. It was a publisher. I was like, oops. So different podcast. But today we are definitely on the writer's class. And that, you guys, is what I would call, when I do the introduction for my guests, I call it the ranting ramble, because I'm not good enough to make it a monologue. That was that. It has been witnessed, it has been done, and it's over. Wow. Weird way to end that. Moving on. I'm Winona. Remember to introduce myself. High five to me. Professional. And then I'm one of half of the And I Thought ladies, and we wrote books. Go figure. I'm actually intelligent, but only on the page. Yeah, when I speak, it doesn't work so well. Whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm making it work today. The books are And I Thought Divorce Was Bad, And I Thought Being Grown Up Was Easy, If Only I Were Me, a memoir in verse, Widows Web, Widows Debt, and Foreign Coffee. If you're counting, you guys know what time this is. This is educational book brag time. So that's 6 books. And if you go to our website, which is www.andithoughladies.com, education, because you saw the sign language, right? You can find the rest of our, 6 plus 11 books, and that equals 17 books. I need to say that one more time like a car salesman, because I didn't do good with the ramble rant. So here we go. You can go to www.andithoughtLadies.com. But you're not here to hear about me. You're here to hear about our wonderful guests. Wonderful guests. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Dave Chesson, and when I'm not when I'm not sipping tea with princesses or lightsaber dueling with little Jedi, I'm a book marketing nut. I'm the creator of Kindlepreneur.com, as well as Publisher Rocket and Atticus, and I've worked with New York Times bestselling authors of all genres.
Okay, I'm sorry. That was so professional and concise. I feel a little embarrassed with my introduction.
Yeah, no worries. I've been doing it for years.
I was gonna say, how many times have you done this?
Yeah, no idea.
So you are the Kindlepreneur. For people who don't understand, although that would be weird to be on the writing class and not know what Kindle is, because I feel like you would be an author and or reader. But can you explain what a Kindlepreneur is?
Yeah. Well, Amazon created Kindle Direct Publishing, which is the biggest online market out there. It was also the forefront of allowing anybody to become an author, because before that happened, you would have to go through the publishing gatekeepers. Okay. This is where you would have to get an agent, and then you would have to get it to the right publisher, and the publisher would have to be in the right mood, and maybe they'd select your book. And that was the only way you could actually become an author. Then Amazon was like, hey, you could skip that and go to the biggest book market without them creating the self-published component. Now, the problem was that when you do this, you're not only an author, you're also a marketer. And so you can't just take your book, throw it up there, and just let it roll and just keep writing. There's so many other things to it. And so this is what got me into teaching and creating the website Kindlepreneur, because I believe that authors need to be part author and part marketer. So you might be an author, but you're an entrepreneur. And when you take that and you understand that, you put it together and you educate yourself in that manner, you'll see a much better result on your efforts. And so that's where the name came from.
Nice. So what do you say to the people out there? Because we hear it quite a bit that are like, to be creative, you have to just like let it go. Don't dirty it up with the business aspect. You're not really an artist if you're pulling out the business aspect.
Well, I mean, if you go into any entertainment, right, section, everybody is using market data to figure out what is the right thing. And while, yes, we are creative and it's fun to be creative, publishing companies don't just come up with ideas or stories just off the top of their head. Case in point, when Twilight came out, okay, and just all of a sudden took, the market by storm. let me tell you what, if you had written a vampire, teen, romance, like every publisher would have taken it because everybody was hungry for it, right? And it's not just, so it's about understanding the market and doing some of the things and fitting the right feel. It's kind of like the mold. If you're writing young adult, you should have a certain story structure, right? If you're writing for children 9 years old, guess what? You can almost count up the number of words per chapter and they're almost the same. And why is that? Because 9-year-olds, have a feel for the type of book. If it gets too long, if the chapters are too long, if the words are too big, it just isn't going to fit. And so there's all these little things that can go into making your book fit your reader. You can still be creative, but you have to understand your genre. You have to understand your market in order to truly connect and really be successful in that manner. So authors have this opportunity to get their creativeness onto a page, right? And that is one part of it. Now, the things you do about it, like how you construct your book cover, the marketing you do around it, that's going to give your writing the chance to get to the right people. And that's why it's important. So it's not about killing your creativity. It's helping to focus and harness it in the right direction to fit what your goal is, which is to be read.
Exactly. Thank you. I'm going to take like just the last sentence when people ask me that question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it.
They say it's the sincerest form of flattery, so I will definitely be flattering you by just taking that last sentence to copy. When people ask me the question. Now, how do we balance? A lot of people have a problem with, like, they've written the book and then they're going to write a sequel, but then they also have to balance the marketing and the time. You've actually had a few shows about this. So how do you balance it for yourself?
Well, one thing I'm going to say to people is that the reason why most authors fail is because they never are intentional with their time. Okay. Everybody has this desire to write a book. Okay. But if you just kind of write your book whenever you think you have time, you'll never get it done. We've all signed up for this online course or something that we want to see and learn something. And then we never schedule it. So it just never happens. It's always that course, that maybe you paid for, you never did. Same thing with writing. If you don't have scheduled time, like, let's face it, you're like, oh, I'll write when I get home from work. Well, you get home from work and it was a bad day at work and you're tired and you grab that glass of wine and you're like, yeah, this ain't happening. I am done. And that just keeps progressing more and more. So what I tell authors is that the one major factor that differentiates those authors that truly take that step and those that never do is that they're intentional about their time and they schedule it. They schedule that from this time to this time, Monday through Sunday or Monday through Friday, something very habitual, okay? They are writing from that time period. And then at another time period, so they separate the two, it's about marketing. It's either conducting marketing or learning and educating yourself on marketing. And if you can be intentional, you can split those two times and do that as a habit, there's no way you won't succeed. Where people fail is they just try to fit it in when they can. And then that's a really hard uphill battle. Some people can still do it, but I feel like for those guys, it's like cramming a square peg through a round hole and they just cut the corners off. And it's a pretty bloody mess, but they can do it.
There is a large learning curve to being an entrepreneur and a creative, because as a writer, you are constantly learning information and research, and you're constantly learning about how your craft, and you're constantly improving. But then also you have the marketing strategies that keep changing them. There is no standard marketing thing right now, unless you know something that I don't, and that is quite often the case. In which case, fill me in that if there's a standard marketing thing. But how do we jam all that information and continue to move forward with the times?
Well, there's the old saying of how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. What's really important for authors, especially when it comes to marketing, is understanding that there's no such thing as the perfect marketing skill. Okay. There are billions of things you can do constantly. I mean, just to ramble a little bit so as to highlight the point is, I mean, you got Facebook ads, you got Amazon ads, you got keywords, you've got like all these things. And now there's this new book talk thing that's really exciting and people are doing. Here's the kicker though. You don't have to do everything. As a matter of fact, you should not do everything. what you should do is you should focus on one or two. Okay. And you should really get good at those one or two. And you will see better results focusing on one or two than trying to dabble in 10 or 15. Because when you dabble in 10 or 15 different things, you do nothing really well, and you spin your wheels and you get really tired and you don't see the kind of results you do. Now, that's not to say that you stick with the two, because it's kind of like writing a book. I'm probably gonna break a lot of people's hearts here, but I'm gonna tell you this, okay? Your first book is probably gonna suck. Like, and I know that sounds terrible and people get, but like, I'm telling you, I've talked to some of the most famous authors, and this is the thing I've heard from, Ted Dekker told me this, Orson Scott Card, and I mean, these guys are huge, and every one of them I've talked to, they always have that story. Like, I love asking them, what was your first book like? Right? Just when you go to a book conference or you meet one of your, ask them about the first book. And if they say a book that's famous, be like, no, tell me the first one. Because you never find out about the failures, and they will tell you about the first one, and they all have it, that they spent years writing this one book, this is going to be their thing. They've thought about this as a child, like this is going to be the one, and they get it and they send it to an agent, or something. And the agent literally says, this is terrible. Like, sorry, man, this is just terrible. And then it was like, oh, well, I'm going to fix it. And then they spend all this time trying to fix it, and they do it. They submit it again. They're like, okay, start over. And they do. But here's the thing. Writing is a skill. It is a skill. And the more you write, the better and better you get. Okay. That's just writing. Now let's go over to marketing. And marketing is going to be that same way. Hit the first one or two things. Choose two things on your first book. You're going to gain that skill. And then when you write your second book, you're going to write a better book than the first one. And then add two more things. And this can be a progression that an author can truly take to build their platform, to build their skill set as a complete author. And because, I mean, let's face it, everybody hears about the lottery winner, the person who just wrote one book, put it out there, and now they're rich and famous. Like, got it. There are lottery winners out there, but the true self-published authors and even published authors have this long period of working really hard and growing that skill, improving their writing with every book, improving their marketing with each step, and growing it. So don't think you have to come out here swinging, do everything perfect. Like, truly treat it like an education. Treat it like you're building a skill. When somebody goes to learn how to juggle, right? What do? They start off with one ball, then they'll start off with two balls, then they'll add a third one in there, and oh boy, that jump from 2 to 3 is that's hard. And then when they kind of get that, they'll throw in the fourth ball, and it's not as hard as the jump from 2 to 3. And then the fifth and the sixth and the seventh, and next thing you know, they're amazing, right? But going from fifth ball to sixth ball or sixth ball to seventh ball is so much easier and faster than it was 2 to 3. And I think that kind of imagery and that kind of, if you were to graph that out for difficulty, that's a really, really good analogy for what it's like to become a complete author.
I'm assuming you were a juggler?
No, I'm not, but everybody
can
imagine that as the example. I juggle a lot of duties with my kids, that's for sure. Oy vey.
I was going to say, because going from that second ball to that third ball, that takes a long time, and that really is like the skill of juggling.
Yeah, and I feel like there's always this inflection point for authors, that when they take it slow and they truly have devoted them, like, this is what I want to do, I want to be successful in this, they need to understand it's going to be like juggling. You just can't jump in, throw in the, just, I'm starting with 10 balls, here we go, and not have them all come crashing down. But treat it like something where that, guess what, today I'm better than I was yesterday, and each day I'm going to progress. And if you look at it that way, believe me, one day you're going to hit that inflection point, and next thing you know, you'll look back and be like, wow, that just happened. I'm like, this is so cool. I have a following, I have fans, I'm each book is easier to launch. And that's another thing too that comes with it, is that the more books you write, the more fans you gain, which makes the next book that much easier, and so it's really a cool platform growth component.
Yeah, it is. I'm gonna say I do know. I actually met one of those people that you're like they're a lotto winner. Yeah, I met one of those. I was crushed because you're like, oh yeah, but everyone has a backstory. No one came out of nowhere. And then I met someone and they were like, I wrote my first book and then I sent it to this person and they were like, love it. And then they became like a bestseller. And I was just like, well, how long did that take? And they were like, well, I think it was 6 months. It's like,
Yeah,
what?
there are lottery winners, but what 99.99999% of the people out there need to understand is the lottery winners are not the exception. And if you're not a lottery winner, you don't consider yourself a failure. You only become a failure in this goal or in this drive when you stop.
True. So true. I have like 1,001 questions I want to ask about, of course, writing and marketing, because I love the idea of marketing. I like the idea of garnering PR more than marketing, because marketing is like the work and PR is the fun. But let's ask about you. Let me switch gears because we don't segue on this show. So we're just switching gears.
Okay.
Why did you launch Kindlepreneur? Like, out of all the things that you could have called the show, why Kindlepreneur?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I was a kid, I got diagnosed with good Lord, I'm like blanking out. It's dyslexia. And a lot of it, like, I struggled through school hardcore with just English in general. And back then it wasn't known, like dyslexia wasn't as well known as it is today, that there's also lots of different forms of dyslexia. So all I basically went through school just thinking I'm never destined to write. Like, this is not my jam. I went as far away from writing as possible. I went into physics and math as like my subject matter. That's what I studied in college. But it doesn't mean like you don't have that desire. Like, I'm a hardcore sci-fi nerd. I really enjoy, like, I'm the kind of guy that watches a movie and then I'll sit and think about it for like 20 or 30 minutes after the fact, breaking down the story elements and then coming up with my own opinion as to what they did right, how they could have fixed it. So I mean, just because you have a hard time writing doesn't mean that the art and the desire to create is driven out of you. And so fast forward years later, I was in the military. I got stationed on the other side of the world in Korea, on a Korean base. I actually wrote my first book while on a South Korean warship, not a US warship, but a South Korean warship. And so proof that you can write a book from anywhere. But the thing was that I was no Ernest Hemingway. I couldn't just sit down and write about anything. Okay. Ernest Hemingway could write about a butterfly and I'm sure it'd be amazing, right? Because he's just that incredible. He can bring out things, that other people want. What I learned, and I did a lot of like military diplomacy back in the day, is that you can go to a party and if everybody at that party knows that one person has the answer that we all need, okay, they know this, then even if that person isn't a good orator, okay, they can't speak, but even if they got a speech impediment, people are still going to show up to listen to what they have to say, and they're going to take value in it. So for me as an author, I was like, I just can't sit down and just come up with something. And instead, I started asking myself questions about Amazon, which, is the world's largest online store. And even more so, it's a search engine. People go to Amazon to search for the next read. Because of that, I started to ask myself, well, okay, instead of just coming up with something to write, why don't I do some research and try to figure out where there are openings or opportunities for me as an author to get my foot in the door? Let me look at this market. Let me figure out ways to get information from them. If you think about it, publishing companies do the same thing. They know what's hot, and they know that I have sat in publishing company, like big company meetings, boardroom meetings, where they're trying to figure out which books to sign. And the information they're using isn't whether a book is better or not, it's which one's fitting the trend, right? And so they will make these decisions based off of it. So I kind of did that way back in the day. And because of that, it gave me a much faster start in, getting my foot in the door. And truth be told, is oh man, I read some of the stuff that I wrote like years ago and it's embarrassing. But luckily, the things I was doing was in high demand, that I was like, some of my, shall we say, writing sins were forgiven. because it was in demand. And that gave me my start. And so I started looking at everything that was on the internet. And because nobody taught me this, I had to kind of like figure it out on my own. And I realized nobody's talking about, just understanding the market, analyzing Amazon. Amazon gives a lot of really good information. They don't do it on purpose, but it's out there. And so when I started doing that, I started writing about it on Kindlepreneur. That really, because it was unique, that, again, something that many people wanted and they couldn't find it anywhere. And so again, it was just like my books. It got my foot in the door and it made me stick out. Now I chose the name Kindlepreneur because, the Kindle reader is Amazon's ebook reader. That's the name they give it. And the process by which self-publishing is under KDP, which stands for Kindle Direct Publishing. And so I figured, hey, you know what? That sounds cool because it will be like you're the Kindle entrepreneur. And so instead of it just being a name of a website that's just about writing, like the Writer's Edge or writing or something like that, I'm like, look, I'm going to teach you about, we'll talk about writing, but more importantly, I'm going to talk about how you package your book when you're done. How do you make it fit what the market thinks? How do you get it best positioned? How do you convince Amazon to show your book more? And so I figured that phrase, that name, Kindlepreneur, like Kindle Entrepreneur, was a much better representation of what I was trying to do. And so that's how it all started.
Can you tell us a bit about your show? There was a much better question that I had in my mind, and I was just like, nah, just tell us about your show. I feel like you'll be best to explain it.
Yeah, well, actually, so it's kind of funny. I started by writing on articles, right? Now, truth be told is that my goal is to teach. And sometimes certain types of information is best shown. So when I got to a certain subject, I was like, all right, I need to create videos for this because I can't write that. It's not going to be beneficial to show a whole bunch of little pictures, and have little words. Like, why not record me doing something? So I've done a lot of YouTube videos because I felt that was best. One time I even tried to tackle a subject and I was like, I can't do this. I ended up just creating a whole free video course, because I was like, no article, no one video is ever going to give people what they really need. Another thing that I did too, like you were talking about, was I created a podcast because some people, they don't have the time to read the articles or watch the videos. And many people are driving back and forth to work every day. And so you could just pop in the podcast, listen to it on there. And so what I did was I actually structured each episode to be like a lesson. And it was like, all right, in today's podcast, we're going to learn about this. And I give background information about all of that. It's not reading my articles, but it's paraphrasing a lot of it. And then I'm like, all right, now I'm going to bring on a guest who did exactly what we just learned. We're going to find out some more information. And then at the end of it, I recap. So it's kind of like, all right, in this podcast, we learned X, Y, and Z. Here's some things that, we can take and do. So it's almost like coordinated, organized lessons, I guess. But that's really just been kind of my MO is, how can I best present the information? How can I best teach this? Sometimes an article is great. Sometimes it's a video. Sometimes the medium people need is just to listen. And so I'm just always trying to find the best way to present.
I think I have a saying that you have to be willing to reach your fan the way that they want to be reached, because not everyone wants to read. And as you said, sometimes they want to listen, sometimes they want to watch. And in our case, sometimes they just want something fun that has nothing to do with what you originally started with.
Very true. Yeah. I would caveat two things to the statement. First and foremost is that you need to understand the right content for that medium. Okay. So for example, there's one thing that a lot of people will do that that I just don't think is effective. And what it is like say, for example, this podcast episode, this episode here, right? Some people will then take a transcript and then they'll post it as a blog post. And then some people will then take that same thing and they'll turn it into a YouTube video. And while, yes, some people may see it, the fact of the matter is that how we are talking now is for the listener. It doesn't translate well into a blog post of just transcription. It doesn't translate into a YouTube video. And so as you can see, like when I create a YouTube video on for Kindlepreneur, it is not me just taking my blog article. It's because I need to show someone, and that's why people go to YouTube. If I am doing a podcast, people don't have the ability to highlight or take notes. They're probably driving. So I have to really break it down into bite size, if it's supposed to be something about learning. Now, my thing is that I'm trying to teach. I'm not an entertainer. It's just never been my jam. And so I don't try to be something I'm not. That's another thing. I'm like, hey, you've come to Kindlepreneur, or you're on my email list, or you're watching my videos. You're there for information, and that's what I'm going to do. So just to recap on that, the first thing is that the same content doesn't work on the different mediums. And if you're truly going to do that, then augment it to truly bring out the important part of that medium, whether it's video, voice recording, written work, etc. And second off is truly know who you are and be you. And again, I'll say it, I'm not the best entertainer. I'm a nerd, but I'm not exactly funny. I don't try to be. I try. Actually, you want to hear something funny?
You said you're not exactly funny. Sure, I definitely do.
Well, it's more against myself, and I will leave it up there. If anybody ever goes to my YouTube channel and you click on the videos, you can scroll all the way down to the first ever video I launched, and it is embarrassing. I mean, it is, and you know why? It stresses this exact point. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos. I saw this guy that was funny. He was doing all these crazy things. I was like, okay, that's how you do videos. And so then I'm like, that's cringeworthy. But I'm like trying to be funny and trying to be upbeat and all this. And all it is just embarrassing. So I leave it up there so that people could say, hey, see, that's when he wasn't being true to himself. That's when he was being somebody else. And also too, it's really shoddy work. But everybody starts somewhere. So
yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, where we start is probably where we're going to end. I'm warring between two questions. I want to ask a whole nother question about branding, but then there's another question. I'm going to go with branding. Another question was going to win out, but I'm going to go with branding. How important is it to an author to know their brand and have set it up?
Define the word brand for me.
For me, I know what I think it means. And quite honestly, I feel like you should define your brand in your answer.
No, I meant like when you say brand, though.
Listen to me, know exactly what I'm asking.
Okay.
I guess I will. I'll define it. Okay. So for me, a brand is how you want to be represented to the public in an overall kind of umbrella thing. And then the marketing of the little pieces that you want to emphasize at that time and use to get your people to be attracted to your brand for the sole purpose of purchasing something.
So the crazy part about being an author is that when people first find your writing, they're not yet fans of you. They may be super fans of your book, your characters, the things you've created. They might not even know your name yet. As a matter of fact, I've always said, as kind of a general rule of thumb, they got to read like 7 things of yours before they actually start to take notice of you. Because here's what I mean by that. I've read a book by an author and I love the book, but I do not love that author enough that I'm just going to read anything they write. I'm definitely stuck to the story though, and I like the story. And it takes a while. It takes a couple of readings, whether it's reading a book, a blog post, an email, something of theirs, that the more I keep connecting with their content, okay, or their art, the closer and closer I get to actually becoming a fan of them. And by fan of them is the closer I get to saying, man, that author is so good. Oh, I see they came out with a new book. Hey, let me look at it a little harder than I normally would. Now, like, I'm a huge Brandon Sanderson fan. Anything that guy writes, I will read. There are many authors that I'm really big fan of, and I will probably read. There are even more authors before that where I'll take notice. And then there's a whole bunch of books where I've read and I don't remember the name of the author. I have no idea who they are. So I say this because we as authors can sometimes make the mistake of, hey, somebody read my book and they liked it and they gave it a 5-star. They must be my fan. No, they probably have forgotten your name. They don't even know who you are. That's why it's important for authors to try to re-engage. And so one of the biggest marketing things I highly recommend for any author out there, especially if you intend to write more than just one book, is really, 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 really focus on trying to get the email address of the reader. Okay. Because so let's pretend somebody somehow found your book. You did some good marketing, you did some ads, they found your book, they read it. They get to the end of the book. Now, if they finish the book, that means they liked your writing, more than likely, right? Because let's face it, there's only a certain percentage of people out there that will still finish a book they don't like. But they got there. Now, again, they like the story enough. They might not know you yet. Now, what happens if you don't have an email list or a way to re-engage them? They put the book down, they move on to other books. And by the time you come out with your other book, say, we'll just say 6 months later, they don't know who you are. They don't remember you. They don't even remember that you wrote that book that they read 6 months ago. This is where collecting their email and being able to engage with them maybe every other couple weeks or something like that keeps it fresh. And then it reminds, when you send out your next book, when you publish your next book, you can proactively remind that person, and because they like the first book, they'll be more likely to buy the second book. Okay. So there's that. There's also, I highly recommend for authors that if you are trying to collect somebody's email, 100% do not just give away a short story. Those don't work. They don't work because, like I said, I'm not a fan of yours yet, to the point that I'll just read anything you wrote. You have to remember, I'm a fan of that story that I just read. So I tell authors that if you really want to nail this, okay, you should write a prelude, a side story, or an afterword or something like that to the book they just read. And then you offer the continuation of that story as the thing you'll give them if they sign up for your email list. What's really cool about this is your conversion rates to your email list will be even higher. And the chances that they'll actually read that next thing is even higher. Remember I said 7? So we're getting even closer, okay, to hitting that 7 where they become friends. So they read the first book, they sign up for your email, they read the email, that's 2. They click and they download and read that short story, that mini story or side story, whatever it is. And then, maybe they follow the next, and guess what? That's 4. You're almost there, right? They're going to have a higher chance of remembering you. Now, what you put in the emails and how you put a brand or a color or something that connects, that's another way to kind of ingratiate or connect. But in the writing world, somebody might buy your book and they may be gone forever. They could have been your fan. They could have been somebody who would have actually liked your writing. They just have moved on. And there are countless number of authors who lost that opportunity with me. And that sucks for both of us. So
Yes, yeah, it does. I think this has been very informative. I love your podcast, so obviously I would love all the information you were going to say. I do think, though, often when I listen to your podcast, I often think, oh, dang, I wish I could use that information, but I can't. I'm a poet. There's not much help for me.
Well, that depends, because here's the thing. So when you write poetry, do you just write about random stuff, or is it themed?
It is a theme poetry book, as always.
There you go. Then you can continue writing in that theme as kind of the offer, right? Like what I'm saying is just not something that's random. Or, if you want to get really creative or something like that, what if in one of the poems there's a hole, and the hole is filled with another poem, or connecting a bridge? What if the poem is one perspective, and then sign up to get the other person's perspective? This person's talking about this person in the poetry form, and now you get to hear the other person's side. But there's ways to kind of connect the dots and make it that it's a continuation. And just to go to fiction, I do the same thing with fiction, where it's in romance, it's just a random example. Maybe the main character who keeps trying to find love again, right, but has been scorned, and the reason why they're having such a hard time maybe dating is because of a terrible ex-boyfriend. All right, all of her friends come over and they talk about, oh man, don't get me started on Mr. X and the date from HE double hockey sticks, whatever it be, right? And they keep talking about this date. Now, The reader of the book doesn't need to know what happened in the date. Okay. But you're putting the little worm on the hook and you're getting them to bite, because at the end of it, you can then deliver them the short story on the date from HE double hockey sticks that caused all the problems. Hey, you're getting the inside information. You're getting to learn what all the other characters knew. It doesn't detract from the story, but it just builds curiosity and it connects me with the story and makes me feel like I have an opportunity to continue on this thing I just enjoyed. With poetry, there are some ways that you can connect that, that you can either leave, like I said, leave a hole that can be filled, give a different perspective. Again, who knows what, but creating something that offers continuation or an inside of some sort, or maybe even a cheat code. Okay. It's funny is that when it comes to poetry, a lot of times I'm like, well, crap, I don't know exactly. I think I know where they were going with this. And what about a little description that actually breaks down some of the parts? Like it's almost like the little study guide, or something like that. There's all these things that could really, kind of draw me in from there. So that being said, is while it might not be as direct or as easy as fiction, or nonfiction is even easier, but you could really develop something that hooks them and drives them to sign up. And then they're engaging more. They're not just signing up for something and just deleting it. They want to know. And now you've engaged them a second time.
Thank you so much. Okay, first of all, please know that I have taken notes on this. If you saw me look to the side, it was because I needed a pen. So thank you. I'm definitely going to use that, especially the perspective and the cheat code one. Although, I don't know. I have my own little thing about that, but I think I'm going to try those too. Thank you so much. Before we wrap up, I'd love for you to give us, as you were talking about the different mediums and the lovely book talk thing. Yes, we do that. So this is the book talk question, y'all. And this is going to make it so much easier for me to find when I'm scrolling through to look for the book talk question, scrubbing through to look for the book talk question. What are the 3 top pieces of advice that you would give to any author out there who's coming out with their debut book but needs to ace their marketing?
Develop a schedule so you don't drive yourself mad. Especially on your book launch, there's lots of little things that need to happen, and schedule them out so you know what you're supposed to do each day. What drives a lot of authors nuts is they sit down, they don't know what to do next, and they spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. Build out that schedule so that you can check it off like it's a grocery list. On Monday, you do these things. On Tuesdays, do these things. Because what you will find is greater satisfaction of knowing you accomplished what you're supposed to. What's maddening is when you don't know what to do and you just think you need to spend time on something and then you don't have that. So that's 1. 2, when you're done with your book launch, go back and do a lessons learned. Think about what worked. Ask yourself if that was worth it. Think about what would you tell yourself the next time you go to learn? Because, hey, guess what? It's a great experience so long as you learn from it. It's like when I'm with my children, I'm like, hey, don't do that. See, now you're not going to do that, right? So take that time and just ask yourself what worked and what didn't, and write that down. And then when you go to do your launch, look back at it again and apply it. I think that'll be great for you. And number 3, in the end, look back and just remind yourself that you're a better author than you were before you launched, because you've now gained all this knowledge and experience, and you're going to gain intuition because of that. And the next launch is going to be better and better and better. And maybe you might not see a financial number that meets your goal, but by golly, you're a better author than you were before. And that's pretty cool.
Thank you so much. Now, where can people find out more information about you, watch your shows, listen to you? You have, I'm pulling from memory here, but I swear that you have a course.
Yep, I got a free course. You can find it at amscourse.com, which is a Amazon ads course. And if anybody has any questions or so, you can find me at kindlepreneur.com, and down at the bottom, you can find a contact me, click that and send your questions my way.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. I still can't believe that you came to be on my show. I'm in utter shock. I feel
just glad to be here.
Cool right now, which is funny because you consider yourself to be a nerd. So I guess I'm a bigger nerd for feeling cool. I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up. I'm Winona, part of the And I Thought Ladies. I never know why I do that at the end because that would be so cute and professional at the beginning if I did it just like that. I'm Winona, part of the And I Thought Ladies. You can find out everything that your ladies are up to at www.andithoughladies.com. When you go to that page, go down to the middle of the page and you'll see the charities that we proudly support. We ask that you please take a little time out and give them a little help. It's been difficult times for everyone over the last couple of years, and especially for the charities as well. We thank you in advance for that. And remember that wisdom is all around you if you're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Winona and the Missing Jade. Oh yeah, thanks for listening.